يروي الإمام ابن ماجه وإمام أحمد والترمذي عن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه عاد مريضا من وعك كان به ومعه أبو هريرة، فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: أبشر، فإن الله يقول: هي ناري أسلطها على عبدي المؤمن في الدنيا لتكون حظه من النار في الآخرة. In a hadith that is narrated by Ibn Majah in his Sunan and Imam Ahmad in his Musnad, as well as Imam al-Tirmidhi, Abu Hurairah narrated that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he once went to visit someone who was ill, and this individual had an illness or a fever, and so Abu Hurairah was with him, with the Prophet ﷺ when he went to visit this man. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said to this man, he said, glad tidings, be of good cheer, for Allah has said, this is my fire, that I allow it to take place or occur upon my believing servants in this world in exchange for that it's their portion of the fire in the hereafter. Now, what does this hadith mean? People get sick, and often enough when they get sick they'll experience a fever, and it's unpleasant, and it's just the natural body's reaction to fighting off illnesses, infections, and whatnot. But what does a fever mean for the believer? For the believer, this is something that Allah Himself has made specific for the believers in this world, saying, this is my fire. Hiya nari, that's how Allah is describing it. The fever, it is the fire of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's one of the forms of the fire. And there are other traditions that talk about how the humma, or the fever in this world, is a portion or part of the fire, that it emanates from the fire in the akhirah. So for the believer in particular, Allah Himself is saying that this is my fire, that I allow it to transpire or to take place for the believer in this world, so that on the day of judgment, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, that the punishment of the fire is lessened. That it is His portion of the fire in this world, and Allah gives it to the believing servants in this world before the hereafter. And it's significant that Allah is saying Abdi, He's saying my servant. This is a way of praising and elevating the station of the mu'min, of the believer who goes through it and he understands this is from Allah, it's a mercy from Allah. Because people will often look at it, this is a punishment. But when we look at it in the greater context, it's a rahmah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And there are some scholars that they interpret this particular hadith while looking at the verse in Surah Maryam. وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا كَانَ عَلَى رَبِّكَ حَتْمًا مَقْضِيًّا. This is in Surah Maryam, it's the 71st verse. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that there will be no one except that they will go over it. وَارِدُهَا, they will see it, or they will go over it, or they will experience it. وَارِدُهَا. And so the scholars, many of them, they mention that this is on the sirat, that when people are crossing the sirat, beneath the sirat is the hellfire. There will not be a single human being except that they will see the fire. They will go cross over it or traverse over it. That this is a matter that has been decreed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's His will that will come to pass. One of the mufassirin, Mujahid, he said, and he explained this verse, that by saying al-humma fi dunya hiya hazzul mu'mini min al-wurud fil akhirah, that the fever that it happens or takes place in the dunya, this is the portion of the believer when it comes to that traversing on the day of judgment over the fire or seeing the fire, because Allah was describing the fire in that verse. وَإِن مِّنكُمْ إِلَّا وَارِدُهَا is talking about the fire. Everyone will see it. Everyone will cross over it or traverse it. Mujahid, one of the great mufassirin, rahimahullah, he said that fever in the dunya is the believer's portion of wurud, meaning that when you traverse over it, when you pass over it, that is the believer's portion of the wurud in the akhirah, meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will save the believer from that if whenever they experience humma in this world. And so when we put things into their proper perspective, any illness, any difficulty that a believer goes through and experiences, always they contextualize it, that this is a means by which Allah is removing their sins. This is the portion of the fire that they will get in the hereafter. Allah is giving it to them in this world, in the dunya, right? So that it's something that is taken care of, and we don't have to go through it or experience it in the akhirah. Does it mean that there aren't believers who will go to the fire in the akhirah? No. Because we know that there are Muslims who will enter into the fire for short periods of time or however long Allah wills in order to remove their sins. But if we take care of those things here and now, and we're conscious of it, and we make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then we experience things that are hard and difficult and painful here and now, understand that this is a way of Allah removing these punishments from us on the Day of Judgment and in the Akhirah. And so we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to continue to allow us to have the best of understandings, and that He bless us with safety, with security, with well-being, and that He grant us the understanding that should we go through any difficulty, any illness, any sickness, it is Allah's way of removing the difficulties on the Day of Judgment before we reach it while we are still here in the dunya. يروي الإمام ابن ماجه وإمام أحمد والترمذي عن أبي هريرة عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه عاد مريضا من وعك كان به ومعه أبو هريرة، فقال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم: أبشر فإن الله يقول هي ناري أسلطها على عبدي المؤمن في الدنيا لتكون حظه من النار في الآخرة. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد.